everyone, and welcome back to the No Filter Just Faith podcast. I'm so excited today to be joined by Julia Hogan Werner, a licensed counselor, a private practice owner, and author. So we're going to talk about all things mental health and faith and just how those two are integrated. Julia, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Can you kind of start us off by just sharing why you started your private practice and what led you to this awesome career path?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know, how far back should we go? But I guess I'll start with undergrad.
Yeah.
I always was interested in making connections with things and seeing themes.
Yeah.
So I loved reading, and I thought maybe that would be English major, material.
Yeah.
But then I realized I did not like reading books that I didn't necessarily want to read, right?
Fair.
And so I was trying to figure out, what can I do? And so I was thinking about business, and then I thought about psychology and how that really embraces themes and finding connections in things and patterns and symbolism. And so I thought, okay, I'll major in psychology. And then my school, the University of Dallas at the time, they had this really cool program where non-business majors could get essentially like a business minor and do an internship.
Yeah.
And so I did that. So I was getting, taking some business classes and then majoring in psychology. And then what do you do with a psychology degree?
Yeah.
You either go into research or you become a counselor of some sort. And so I knew I didn't want to go into research. And then when I was looking at schools, it was really important that I could incorporate my faith in some way, even if it was just a school that had a Catholic identity, that sort of thing. And so I was looking around. And at the time, it was called the Institute for the Psychological Sciences. Now it's called Divine Mercy University, but they were in Arlington, Virginia. And they did doctoral degrees and master's degrees in psychology, integrating the Catholic faith. And that's what they did. That was their specialty. So I decided I wanted to go there and take the counseling route as opposed to the researcher route. And then just felt really strongly that people, in order to be your full self, if your faith is important to you, how can you not bring that into the therapy room? But so many people feel like they can't, or they have to defend their faith, or they have to be on guard, sort of like that if they want to talk about something related to their faith, that their therapist is not going to be writing down like, their faith is like the reason for their pathology or their struggles, or this is like, if we could just get rid of their faith beliefs, everything would be fine. And everybody just seemed to be really cautious of going to therapy. And so the more that I was learning at the Institute for the Psychological Sciences and just seeing how seamlessly faith and science fit together and integrated, I just felt like there was, like, I wanted everybody to know about that. And so after I graduated, you have to go through a whole long licensing process. So you, after you graduate, you've got to take a licensing exam, and then you've got to work for 2 years under the supervision of someone, and then you can become fully licensed, and that's when you can open your own practice. So I wound up working for just a regular small group practice in Chicago and Park Ridge. Worked there for 2-3 years, and then just was kind of, word was starting to get out, like, oh, here's, Julia's back from school. A lot of my mom's friends started to help sort of spread the word and be that cool network of people. And then I started building up this little nice referral base of people who are specifically looking for a Catholic counselor. And so then probably 3 years in, I decided to take the leap, and just like that became our niche. That became our specialty at Beta Optimum. Was we offer faith-informed therapy is kind of how I term it. And the idea is just that you, wherever you are in your faith journey, we just want you to know you can bring it into the therapy room, and it's welcome, and we're going to work with it in whatever capacity. But there's no expectations on our end that you have to be, I don't know, quote unquote, the perfect Catholic or the perfect type or have everything figured out. Like that's not what it is, but we just want you to feel like you can bring your whole self, and that includes your faith and what's important to you. So that's our specialty. And cool. So people always ask, what do you specialize in? And that's what I say, because that's really what people are looking for. And I think if I've never ran the numbers, but if I had to estimate, I would say probably like 98% of our clients are specifically Catholic, looking for a Catholic therapist.
Yeah.
And that could be, hey, I was baptized Catholic, and so this really spoke to me when I saw your website. Or it's, I go to daily mass and I go to adoration, and my faith is really important to me. And then people in between.
Yeah. Wow. That is just so cool. I love what you said about how there's such a natural overlap between faith and science. I think that's something that people like forget or just maybe ignore. But when you merge the two, and especially like coming up with a whole business model to serve that need, is just so amazing. And clearly it's very successful because you have how many offices now in Chicago?
We have two.
Two offices. Yep. And you see people online as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then we actually partner with the Newman Center at UIC, and we
smart.
see college students there for a very reduced rate so that they have that option too, and finances don't stand in the way for them. So yeah, that's
awesome.
we're going into our second year with that come August, and we're very excited about that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I just love Vita Optimum. It is
Thanks.
so cool. Seriously. I just think it's such an amazing thing. And not only do you run a private practice, but you also have written a few books. I just had the joy of reading your second book, A Work in Progress. I'll show it so people can see. A Work in Progress, Embracing the Life God Gave You. And I loved it because I feel like it touched on a bunch of different topics that were relatable for me personally, just in this chapter of life. There's a lot of decisions, and there's a lot of just change that happens naturally in your 20s and 30s. And so I feel like you perfectly integrated faith with a lot of the chapters that I think people go through. So I want to talk about a few things. First was, you talked about the unrealistic expectations that we can sometimes hold ourselves to, and how this chasing and pursuit of perfection actually is something that is draining, and ultimately holds us back from what God wants from us. And you said that instead, God invites us to live lives that is authentic and moving towards wholeness. And I loved that. Can you kind of expand on what you mean by authenticity and wholeness?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm so glad that you enjoyed the book. And I wrote it as a collection of things I wish I knew in my 20s, but really felt like I had to learn as I went along. You know, even I wrote about the concept of boundaries in there. That really wasn't a term that I'd ever heard of before until I started my graduate training. And then the more I learned about it, the more I realized, oh my gosh, this is such an important tool, right? And so I think that idea of wholeness and authenticity really is recognizing who you are, your identity at its core. And that's being created and loved by God, right? Created in his image and likeness. And I think we let some of those other things get in the way or crowd that out. And we kind of, I think, lose sight of who we are, and then start to make decisions based on fear or based on this kind of scarcity mindset, as opposed to, well, God created me. He put me in this particular time and place. That doesn't mean that it's going to be easy or that everything's going to be clear, but there can be sort of that peace or trust knowing, like, if I'm trying to do the best, that's all he's asking of me, right? As opposed to having everything figured out and having this like intense 5-10 year plan that's mapped out or super rigid,
right?
You know, or even recognizing your limitations too. I think that was a big thing that I had to learn in my 20s, and I'm still learning. Disclaimer. Totally in progress, as it says. But, you know, recognizing we can't do it all, and that we have to choose where we direct our time and energy, and that's an invitation, I think, from him for discernment, that we have to really, where is he inviting us to go pour our time and energy into? And then where is he not asking us to do it, but we're doing it anyway?
Yeah.
If that makes sense?
Yes, completely. And the idea of wholeness is something that I've been kind of reflecting on lately, because I hadn't really thought about it before, but I heard someone else talking about how, and similar to like what you say, that it's not that God is always calling us to be perfect or to fix us so that we can be perfect. It's that he wants to make us whole so that we can naturally sort of make those decisions, that we can feel his peace and trust him all the time. And that comes when we feel more whole. And so, yeah, those two things, like living an authentic life and then also striving to feel whole because we know our purpose. That was so good. It really spoke to me.
I think too that kind of idea of wholeness that you're talking about and how you're describing it makes me think too, a lot of times I think we feel like we have to prove things, and in reality there's nothing that we have to prove, right? Because God literally died for us, for our salvation. So he took care of that.
Right.
Like we don't have to prove anything. He loves us not because we're perfect or because we've achieved certain things, but because of who we are. And I think it's so easy to forget that.
Yeah.
And I think we all, including myself, need that constant reminder.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to prove it.
Totally. But it's so opposite to like what you experience in the world or just in culture. It's like constantly people are expecting you to prove yourself so that you can land the job, get the relationship, whatever. You feel that pressure, but then you have to remind yourself that that's not truth. That's not what God's asking of us.
And that feels a little bit relieving, right? To hear that, as opposed to you've got to follow this path or you have to make this work. So I think it's not that we don't have to try or that we shouldn't pursue excellence, but that we need to be discerning, is this actually something that is good for me, as opposed to just a checkbox or something that I think I'm expected to do.
Right.
Because that's then when you are in your 30s or your 40s and then you're looking back and you're thinking, why was that random thing so important to me? Or why did I think getting this promotion or this relationship would make me happy, or that would be like the pinnacle of my life? Because there's always something in life too.
There's always
unfortunately,
something.
It's never going to be perfect, and that's just life. So I think being able to roll with that knowledge is also really important.
There's always something. You're so right. And then you also talked about if someone is wanting to live this authentic life, one way to start trying to pursue that life is making sure your values and your priorities are at least exist, that you've acknowledged them. So when you first start, working with someone maybe, or if any advice you have, how do you just give people advice to get their values and priorities kind of outlined?
Yeah, that is actually a really good question. You're right. If you don't have those things ironed out, it's going to make it a little bit confusing in the decision-making
what am I doing?
process. Well, actually, Brene Brown has a list. If you just search Brene Brown and like list of values or something like that, she's got a whole page full of just, I think there's like maybe 3 or 4 columns of just words. And so what I've done in the past is I've had people just go through the list and circle like maybe 3 or 4. You're going to look at them and most of them you're going to say, yeah, these are important things, but there's going to be a couple that really stand out to you. Like, for example, it might be family, or it might be service, or it might be compassion, so going through and identifying those things, because I think that also speaks to the uniqueness of who you are as a person, right? That God gave you these talents and these gifts that you have. And so I think zeroing in on your values is a way of really getting at that, like, who am I? And what is my opportunity to contribute good to the world, or, be an instrument of God in some way through these things that are like really important to me, or gifts that I have.
Right. Yeah. And that might not always be like your career might not be the main, way that you are using the gifts that God gave you. Like, hopefully it is in some way, but I think that's something we just talked about a few episodes ago, was like not getting too caught up in your identity as whatever your job is or your other kind of identities that you hold on to, and just rooting back into that. Your identity is in who God made you as, how he loves you, and just always going back to that. I'm going to read the quote because I just thought it was really good for me. Cultivating decision-making and discernment skills is key for living an authentic life. The idea of decision-making as being important to living an authentic life should be so obvious, but I think that's something I struggle with, is like, okay, big decisions or small decisions, like, how do we go about them? Are there, like, now I feel like relying on my faith is my main strategy. But then you have to be able to walk yourself through kind of a process. So I loved your process that you outlined. Do you have any advice for people who are in their 20s and 30s? Maybe it's a career switch. Maybe it's, do I move to this city? Or just figuring things like that out. How do you typically advise people on big decisions?
Yeah, those can feel overwhelming, can't they?
Yeah.
Like everything is hanging in the balance
Right.
and you've got to pick the right thing. I think self-awareness is really important. So we kind of identified in our conversation like this bigger theme of knowing like we're beloved daughters and sons of God, created in his image and likeness, and that he died for us. And I think that self-awareness is remembering that. And then it's also being very aware of like our state of mind, our emotions. I'm sure you've heard that acronym HALT, like never make a decision when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired.
No, I've never heard that,
Yes.
but I love it.
Yes. So just remember HALT. And if you're hungry, eat something first. If you're angry, go for a walk or something, punch some pillows. Lonely, connect with someone who cares about you. Tired, obviously take a nap. But do those things before you make a big decision.
That's so good.
So that's to kind of help you stay grounded in that when I'm at my calmest or when I'm at my most peaceful, what decision would I make versus what decision would I make
when I'm hungry. Yeah.
Hangry, maybe, or lonely,
Yeah.
right? Like maybe
Yeah.
I don't make the best decisions when I'm feeling lonely. So that self-awareness is really important because if you're, for example, if you're thinking, okay, I'm going to move to a new city, why? What are my reasons? Because I don't like my life here. Why don't you like your life here? Right? Is this just kind of a wish for just want to leave everything behind, fresh start, then everything will be better?
Yeah.
Well, if I haven't worked on the things that maybe are contributing to the tension that I'm experiencing here, they're going to also be in my little suitcase and traveling with me when I move to the other city. And then you're going to be surprised and disappointed that the change wasn't there. So with the self-awareness, it's being honest with yourself about why you're making a decision. You know, am I saying yes to something, but I'm feeling like this icky pit in my stomach or I'm feeling a tightness in my chest? That might mean it's because I'm making a decision that isn't really in line with maybe how I want to be as a person.
Right.
Or, you know, honoring my true identity. Maybe I feel like I have to say yes because this person will get mad at me. Or I'm in kind of a, I don't know, weird position at work with expectations that I have to answer emails at, you know, 11 p.m. or something. I see those, you know, people do like my day in the life. And it'll be, you know, emails from, you know, 10 p.m. to 12 a.m., you know, to catch up on my finance job or whatever. I'm like, why?
Why? I know. No, I feel that way too.
Please don't. And I understand it's very complicated and I don't know the ins and outs, but I can't imagine, right?
Yeah.
So but as an example of being aware can help you tune into what are the motivations at play? What am I hoping this is going to accomplish? Is this actually the solution that's best, or is there another route for me? But if you don't have that self-awareness, if you're not working on that and cultivating that, it's really hard to access that. Then you're kind of riding on emotions or maybe what other people are pushing you to, as opposed to really, okay, what would be best in this situation? And it's not always a perfect decision, right? I don't think every decision is like... carries the weight of the world on its shoulders. And if you choose the wrong way, I definitely believe there are things that God says, sure, you pick, right? And like, it's okay, whatever you decide, you know, it's not like you chose A and he said, oops, I really wanted you to choose Z and now your life is going to be miserable and awful because you didn't choose that. I don't think that's always the case, but sometimes we treat decisions like that. Right? Yeah.
I think that's like such a temptation, is to like almost be afraid that you are going to mess up so bad that then God's going to like be mad or something. And it's like, wait, no, slow down.
Yes.
Like God honors that you are making the best decision that you can using the judgment that he's given you. And so, I think that's so good. And I do think it's important to have those like frameworks in place for how we go about making decisions. Because like if I made decisions only based on my feelings, oh no, like that.
Oh no.
we would just be doing some crazy things, I'm sure. Like I'm going to be using the halt a lot. Oh my gosh, no decisions when you're hangry. But it's so true because like, and when I was reading the book, I was thinking about how like big decisions, I think I'm lucky to have some good soundboards in my life where like
That's great.
And I'm really grateful for the people that like let me talk their ear off and like, you know, those sorts of things. So coming to big decisions, I feel like I do have good frameworks, but it's the little decisions, the day-to-day stuff where I know that I fall short sometimes, and like we all do. But yeah, like, you know, okay, how am I responding to this situation? Or what am I going to do to take care of myself today? Those sorts of things. That's when I find myself really leading more with my feelings rather than like what I know is best. And so that, I mean, I'm assuming just takes practice. I wish there was like another little like
Is there a switch
remedy.
you could flip? Yeah.
I don't know if you've researched that at all, but practice.
I think the easiest thing that at least I've found is making sure that I'm, even if it's like a minute in the day, like periodically just kind of stepping out of the cycle or whatever you're in, you know, and just having a minute of like, how am I doing? Or how am I feeling? Or am I feeling rushed? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Like what's going on right now? And then kind of trying to just talk myself through that, I think has been really helpful, because then I sometimes describe it as like with stress and life, you just want to kind of have like your windshield wipers going on the car to sort of clear it away so you can always see instead of not having them on. And then, you know, it's torrential downpour in this analogy here, right? And you can't see, and then you're having to furiously, you know, flip those on, and they're going, you know, so intensely that you're kind of afraid they're gonna like fly off the car. You know, you're like, is this safe? But the idea being like, am I just always kind of like tuning in and addressing stress? Like, do I need to go out for a walk around the block and just clear my mind, or was that a really stressful conversation? Can I like text a friend? Can I listen to a song? Can I just take a deep breath? You know, those sorts of things I think make it easier than for you to, in the middle of the day with decisions, just kind of be in a place where you're in a good headspace. Right.
That reminds me of, we just had a Jesuit scholastic on who shared the practice of daily examine.
Perfect.
And
See?
that is, it's so cool.
It's just
which
all
is why I'm so
aligning.
glad that you found all this integration of naturally faith and mental health, because it's so true. And he was sharing about daily examine and how he does it at noon and at the end of the day, and just how checking in is a good way to like stay on track.
I guess to like loop it back to what we were talking about earlier too, with struggling with perfectionism, if someone struggles or wants to be perfect. What you just said, I think, is a really important reminder there, that the goal is not to never be the little baby, and that we always want to stay that way, and we're exactly where we're meant to be if that's how we're feeling.
Right.
I really love Searching for and Maintaining Peace by Father Jacques Philippe.
Okay.
That's so good. He also has a book about Saint Therese as well.
Okay.
But he talks a lot about how even our faults are these moments where we can say, wow, thank goodness I have God, and it's not all on me, right? Because a lot of times in those moments when we stumble, we're like, oh, I did a terrible job. I messed up. I'm not perfect. I should be perfect, when in reality, it isn't up to us. And what a relief. That like when we stumble, we just need to get right back up, and God's going to take care of it. And he loves us, and his grace is there. Like, oh,
I know.
Thank goodness.
Feels great. Yeah. I'm so
you can
grateful.
walk a little lighter today.
Yes. Such good reminders. Well, I think this book is filled with so much wisdom, and I'm just so grateful that you wrote it, because I seriously, it was really impactful on me. And I'm grateful for this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us.
It was great.
One question that I like to ask all guests is, what is something in your faith right now that is fueling your faith? It could be a book. It could be something that you're doing, just anything that you feel like you would recommend.
Yeah. Well, since it's summer, I just love spending time outside. And to be honest, just sitting outside and practicing just mindfulness and observing what's going on. And I think having those moments of appreciation for nature actually helped me feel really close to God, you know, and sort of, wow, he created all of this and it's here. And if you can pause in your busy life and just, I mean, to be honest, like watch the bird or the squirrel or the bunny or the flowers that are growing or the breeze in the trees, right? Like, I mean, it sounds really simple, but in those moments, I just feel really calm and very present, and then able to feel more like connected to God in a sense, right? Like he created this. I'm here. I can just be.
So good.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that answer. And I'm inspired to get outside
Summertime,
later.
you
Yes,
know?
I know. We got to be by the lake.
And then the Chicago winters, you're like,
I know. Where is it?
So that's why I'm always outside.
Yes. Well, thank you, Julia, so much. And if anybody wants to find any of your books, resources, Vita Optimum is the name of your practice. And then you're on Instagram as well.
Yes. Yeah. So we have Vita Optimum Counseling on Instagram. And then my personal Instagram is Julia Hogan LCPC. And then I also have a newsletter. So if you go to my website, which is juliamariehogan.com, there's an option, and I send out a monthly newsletter too.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for
Thanks
being with
for
us.
having
we'll
me.
See you soon, I hope.
Sounds good.